Welcome back to the things we know. And I am happy about today's topic. We're going to talk about brave women who speak out, whether it's on a national stage or in a personal moment. We kind of just want to have a conversation about this kind of courage and how it shapes our culture and inspires us and moves us forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to talk about this, how historically it's been true, but we're certainly seeing it right now. As a registered Democrat, for the most part, although there will be an honorable mention later, I'm just like, what are y'all doing? What are y'all doing? Why are you just sitting back? And
Oh, you mean like with the I mean, sorry, the Democrat leaders. Yeah,
just,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, Democrats in general, yeah, anybody in government. I'm like, what are y'all doing? Just like letting this
Yeah.
happen. And the ones who are speaking up, which is what prompted this topic, are the women. But
And
let's
and not just and they're not just Democrats. There's some Republican women too. Like
true,
it's
true.
just yeah, I think what we wanted to do too is just conf just really talk about the courage it takes and
Yeah,
what we're seeing all across the board, like whether it's confronting injustice, breaking silence about trauma, challenging systems of power, just people who just be are brave enough to be honest in those moments. So I think like we started to notice like there's that female bishop who really said have mercy
yep,
and was just vilified
yep.
and was told to apologize, and she's like, I'm not going to apologize for asking for mercy. Or there's like the governor of Maine and a senator from Alaska, one of which is a Republican, were like, I have to speak up for what I believe in,
Yep.
even if I don't agree with you when you are speaking in a way that's going against the tide that you're supposed to be going with. And I just keep noticing it's mostly women, not
Yep.
all, but like it's impressive. It's super impressive, and I hope that they know we're noticing.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, why is it so hard for women to speak out? Although, again, we're seeing a lot more of it now. But I mean, on the historically speaking, what has kept us from, I don't know, I've never not spoken out, so it's so hard for me to even understand this question.
Yeah, I know that would be hard for you. It's not as hard for me because I definitely can relate to that really nervous feeling that that it was just sort of like cultured part of the way I was raised. I was
Mm,
raised around people who felt like women should be supportive, and you know it was never explicitly told to me because it's not like my mom didn't speak up for injustice, because she sure did everywhere,
yeah.
like on a personal level and in a community level. So it's not like I was told women should never speak up, but in general, like I was watching somebody else, I think it was on Instagram, react to what happened with the bishop, speaking to the first and second families right after inauguration. And this woman was raised, in an Adventist, Seventh Day Adventist, culture. So very, women are supposed to be demure. And she said her initial reaction was like her whole body was on fire because it just made her nervous that the woman was doing that. And I could
Mm,
relate to it.
mm,
I could relate to it just for that idea that like don't be difficult, don't call attention to yourself, don't disrupt what's happening. So I do think a lot of women, maybe less and less with younger generations, hopefully, but I think a lot of women our age and older, a lot, maybe not all, because you don't, like, can really relate to that. Like that it's a little scary to suddenly, say something that is going to piss people off. It
mm,
I've really grown beyond that, but I can
yeah.
still relate to that feeling. So I think that there's just something, that socialization to stay small, agreeable, and avoid conflict is inherently a female trait in the patriarchy.
Yeah. Absolutely. No question. Yeah, I remember you telling me that when you saw that video, it kind of like landed for you around the fear of watching. It's like secondhand fear of watching that bishop. Um, Yeah, just that. And it goes back to our episode on caring and kindness, and this new, at least new to me, idea that empathy is bad and women fall prey to empathy. It's like, what? I mean, how can you be caring and supportive if you don't have empathy? I don't want to get back into that topic, but it's striking me. I think two things can be true. You can be supportive and also speak up. And so it's fascinating to me.
Well, yeah, I think that there are times where anyone, male or female, if they really want to, feel aligned with themselves and
Yeah.
their own sense of right and wrong, you have to speak up for, humanity that is getting dehumanized, for like the parts of, our community that are getting dehumanized. And that sometimes goes against the message of the group that
Right.
you're part of. And I think that that is scary for people. And that's probably explains why a lot of good people stay quiet.
But what's the cost of staying silent?
Exactly. Right. I mean, I think for me, it would be much easier. Well, I don't think it would be easier. I think for me, and I've heard other people say this, so this isn't just me, but it's really important for me that if I'm ever lucky enough to have grandchildren, and even for my children, or anyone who's paying attention to me, to know that you know, I spoke up about things, that I spoke up about injustice. That's it. That I'm calling out injustice as I see it,
Yeah.
and that I wouldn't stay quiet about it because I'm lucky enough not to be in its path.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
and I think what it costs is like it's a real bitter feeling. I think we've all done it. Like somebody I was listening to once on a podcast. I want to say it was on We Can Do Hard Things. Can't remember. Dr. Becky. I think that's who it was. So I could be way wrong. But talked about different kinds of guilt. And we talked, and I think we brought it here. And it was like, when you understand the way she put it, it really freed you. Because, in the context of parents or just being a woman or just all this guilt that people walk around with, whether it's from religion or just culture, that there's really distinct way to divide it. There is the guilt we get from obligations or expectations that we put on ourselves or other people put on us when we're not doing things that other people want us to do, or things we like. It has the word should really wrapped around it. That's probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the guilt we feel. The rest of it is actually a good virtue signal of you're not
Mm,
being the person you want to be.
mm,
That guilt is actually really helpful because it's going to put you back on the right path. So to say like, guilt, I used to be like, oh, I'm going to do away with the Catholic guilt and just, stop suffering. No, like, do away with the guilt that you put on yourself or that you're allowing others to put on you. That's a waste of energy. But when you're feeling misaligned because you didn't stand up to something that you knew was right, or you for something, or you didn't speak up when you could have, or you treated someone worse than you would ever want to treat them, you weren't honest, you weren't kind, those things are like meant to help you get back on. They're meant to redirect you, not like
yeah.
label you and make you bad forever, but really truly redirect you in the right path. And I think that's what it costs me, to
Mm.
not speak up. And like, do I do it enough? Maybe not. I'm freaking busy, but where I can, I will, and I do, and I want to do it more because I think it's scary, and there's just a million things that are getting my attention right now. But where I can speak to it, I feel like it's the least I can do.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting because there is that aspect of, and we've talked about it so many times already in season three, of like the water hose of bullshit that is being, the fire hose of bullshit that is being spewed every day. And it's like, pick the things that are important to you, but so much of it is important. And so it's how do I stand up for all of this? And the answer is not standing up.
Mhm.
I was very, and I've said this to you, I think I've said it to other people too, like after this election, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm tired of going to protests. I've been protesting since I was 18 years old, and everything I've ever stood up for is just being dismantled left and right. And so in the moment, I've since changed my mind. I was like, that just feels performative. It means nothing, blah, blah, blah. So I haven't done anything. Now we're recording this a couple of weeks early of when you're hearing it. And this weekend is the hands off march. And I finally thought, you know what? I'm going to do it, because hopefully the mainstream media will cover it and show how many people are coming out across the country. Um, but I finally got to a point where I was like, I got to do something again. Yes, I'm out there on my socials, and obviously the podcast is what it is. Um, but to not speak out, and again, this story. There was I had a potential opportunity to work with a new company, and when I did the interview or the meet and greet, so to speak, it was humming along very well. And then at the end, the person said, we used to be friends on Facebook. I'm not really on there anymore. But if I remember correctly, you were really outspoken about your politics. And that's not going to, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially it was like, I'm not hiring anybody that's doing that. And I ended the interview because I was like,
Yeah.
hey, you don't get to tell me what I do on my private socials, but also what? Like, I just thought,
Yeah.
you cannot ask me to stop doing what I've been doing my entire adult life. It was bizarre. And obviously it is just,
I mean, he
mm,
apparently can, and you can apparently say, no, I'm
yes.
not going to be part of that. Right. Like,
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
true.
that's the thing is people can apparently like want to go really neutral. And I'm not sure that's working out for anyone going really neutral right now. But God bless, if it
Yep.
does, good luck.
Godspeed.
And apparently you can, right? Like, I mean, as you know,
Yep.
I have family that votes very differently than me, and we love and respect each other. We don't get into things a lot, and I try really hard to never, have that get personal. But obviously, not everyone probably likes the way I speak up. So,
Yeah.
and I'm not doing it to malign anybody. I feel like I'm very, very purposeful with like the things I speak out about because I'm often feel like I'm speaking for people who can't speak for themselves, the disabled
Exactly.
and the
Yep.
disenfranchised, and people getting unfairly dehumanized or grouped together on ideology instead of on actual facts. And I'm pretty staunch about that. So,
Yep.
um, I don't know. I think this is an interesting time, and speaking out can cost me close, authentic relationships with my family. It can cost you a job opportunity, and yet I'd rather it cost us those things than our own like ability to look at ourselves in the mirror.
Yeah, no question. Our own humanity. And yeah, yeah. So let's talk about some of the women who have paved the way before us, going so far back
Yeah,
as Sojourner's Truth. And of course, we got
yeah.
Malala and Anita
Anita,
Hill and uh,
Simona Burke, Christine Blasey Ford. Yeah, I mean, I just put a bunch there because, and they're just like the teeniest bit,
I know.
right? And
Yeah.
I think that was just the top of my head. I think throughout modern history, it is again that scary feeling of admiration and like, oh my God, that had to be so hard. And
Yeah.
what we end up seeing and admiring and erecting statues for and renaming after, it doesn't it rarely does it tell the story of like how much literal food and crap got thrown at them on their path, right?
Yeah.
Pretty sure when was it Ruby Bridges was trying
Hmm.
to go to school, like kids are getting hosed down.
Yep.
And I mean, Malala's been shot in the head. So
Yeah.
Anita Hill was slut shamed and like just maligned completely. So yeah, there's been a ton along the way, as with Christine Blasey Ford. Anyone who has come forward to speak up about their abuse, which
Yeah.
really like there's like no end. That is an endless list that we could
Yeah.
probably fill an hour just reading off those names. And those are the just ones we heard about. So many people got silenced before they even did that or felt like it wasn't even worth it. So to be able to come forward speak truth to your abuse and be exposed in that way. And the French woman, what's her name?
Oh
The
yeah.
one, why
I
my
can
brain
never.
can't.
It's like, is it just that? No, that's the.
Yeah,
I know who.
it'll come
Everybody.
to me, but like
It won't come to
it
me.
it costs so much to do it, right?
Yeah,
Like you have to expose yourself and be open to
and
so much
relive it.
critique, relive it, be second guessed, be maligned, be just literally spat at, just to say no. I know that this was wrong and I'm calling it out. um that alone, that alone could be its own topic here, is the amount of women who have had the courage to speak up and still took so many hits doing it. But then like people around, Sojourner Truth, Malala, people around the injustice in the world, Greta Thunberg, right?
Yep, yep.
And the abuse they take, and yet they
And
do
they
it because it
continue.
matters.
And they continue to speak out. They push back and they continue to speak out. Yeah, thinking about like Anita Hill and Christine Blasey Ford, like watching those. Of course, we were in college when Anita Hill spoke out. Christine Blasey Ford was only a couple of years ago, and to watch them have to relive that trauma in front of everyone, and then have male, um, and I'm gonna, we can't whitewash over this. Joe Biden was not great to Anita Hill at all.
No, he wasn't.
He was
Mm-mm.
not. Um, is it's so painful to watch. I saw a video just the other day, a reel on Instagram, and it was this speaker, and it was in a college campus or in like a college big room conference, not like a classroom, but a whatever big room. And there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people in there, a lot of women. And she's like, I always start my presentations with two questions. She said, I want everyone here who has ever been abused or know someone who's been abused to stand up. And almost the entire audience stands up. And then she says, now I want you to sit down if you or the person you're thinking of did not report that abuse. And everyone but two sat down.
That gives me full body
Yeah. And
chills.
then she says, she's like, I am tearing up looking at this right now because we know what happens when women speak up.
Mm-hmm.
They are,
I didn't, and yeah, that's, yeah,
yep. Why didn't you?
it eats through you. Why didn't I? It was my roommate's friend. I didn't feel like the negative attention was going to be worth it. I
Mm-hmm.
felt ashamed. Um, why? I have no idea, because there's nothing I did. Like
But you knew you'd
there
be
was no
made to
even
feel that way.
there wasn't even like any sort of, oh yeah, I knew from probably watching other people go through it. I knew how people were about that, and on some level, right? There wasn't even any even hints at there being anything romantic between us. We were friends, so like there wasn't any. And so like there's no way I even gave those hints, right? So even if I did, I
Right.
didn't deserve that. So
Right.
no, it's horrible. And then later when it happens to people younger than me, I feel like I had this wave of guilt come back through me, like, wow, if more people like me had stood up, maybe this wouldn't have happened to these young women. So it hits you in waves, it costs you in waves,
Mm.
for sure. um and that just, yeah, the amount of women who just don't. And I think of one in particular who's really special to me, and it's just like she didn't want it to be her whole life going after this uphill battle when nobody was supporting this. Everyone was kind of like, ugh, just let it go. And yeah, so it, yeah, women who actually put themselves through it, like this French woman whose name I'm so mad that I'm forgetting. She was like, no, you don't have to keep it confidential. I have nothing to be ashamed of. He does, and all these men do, not me. And I think like, wow. I mean, I tear up every time I think of stories like that, because they have the courage to do what so many of us didn't do.
Yeah. And it's self-preservation and things like this. I don't know if you can look her up while in case people aren't familiar with the story. It is a woman in France whose husband repeatedly drugged her and then invited his friends to come in and rape her for many, many years. And when she did,
Giselle Pellicot.
there we go.
Yes.
Thank you. I knew it was
Yeah.
Giselle, but then I was getting confused. Um, and yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like not all men, but these were men of all different walks of life. And it was repetitive over the years. Um,
Yep.
and yeah,
Yeah.
she stood up there and let it all out.
Yes. And there's even when it's not of a sexual nature, there's so many stories when I was like, when we were thinking of this as a topic of like statistically, female whistleblowers get punished way more heavily than male whistleblowers within a company. Like if somebody speaks up about something that's being, done illegally or incorrectly or unfairly, that women get demoted more and fired more, or let go more after speaking up than men. It just really becomes kind of culturally more normal for women to pay the price by ostracizing themselves for speaking out.
We were just with a friend of ours who felt like she had spoken up at her job, and it was really just advocating for herself. And she felt like the minute she did that, a target was on her back for the
Yep.
rest of her employment at that place. Ugh.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about you've named a few, but let's go in a little more detail about some of our contemporary examples that I feel like we're this is such a heavy topic, and so I feel like we're both sort of like meh, meh,
Yeah.
energetically
Yeah.
because it is. And let's get the energy back up and talk about these amazing women and one
Yes.
honorable mention man
Yes.
who have been standing up to you know, um, to the patriarchy
Yeah.
and the misogyny and all the things that happen. So why don't you start?
Yeah. And these first three are really contemporary with this, with the current administration, but not all of them are. These first three are really more recent. So Janet Mills, Governor Janet Mills of Maine, she stood up to a federal order that was banning transgender athletes from women's sports and said, see you in court to Trump when they were in the same room. And we're not getting into any of the laws around this because that's a whole other thing. It's just the fact that like so many different lawmakers don't agree with each other on topics like this. And she was like the first people to be like, actually, you know, we'll do this the hard way or we'll do this the easy way, but we're going to do this. Like to speak up is the point. Like, oh, that was like the first governor we heard on any topic stand up to him. And it happened to be a female governor. So it stood out to us. And that was something like, it just kind of, I think we texted each other like, oh, female
And it was
governor just
public.
stood up
She
to him.
did it in
Yeah.
front of the cameras, even. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't just a tweet back and forth. She was like, okay, see you in court, like outright to
Yeah.
his face.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, Another woman who has repeatedly, really over the years, I've often wondered why she doesn't change party affiliation, quite frankly. Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. She is the only Republican to vote against whatever this agenda is that Elon and Trump are trying to push through. Um, and she's really called out the political retribution with such courage and clarity and this is not her first rodeo. She's been doing this. She's often voted against the party when, especially around women's issues. She's fallen short sometimes too, but um, and I don't know if she's on here, but on again another mention to somebody who I don't agree with in any way, shape, or form. But Liz Cheney, come on, she blazed the
Hmm.
trail in the Biden administration and going after January 6th and the horror that that day was.
Well, and
Um,
she
and
lost
she
her
lost her seat. Yep.
seat in speaking out. So again, whether you agree with, I don't know if you don't agree with any of these things, you might not even be listening to us, but whether you agree with these things or not, these are women who were willing to lose something to speak out for what they believe in. And what I most noticed about her recently was her, saying like, if the people from Alaska want to unelect me, like replace me, they can, but
Yep.
this is something I can't not speak up about. And then
And
we
that's
already mentioned,
huge.
yeah,
I just, again, I want to stop. Sorry. That is huge because, you know, I don't want to say Twitter sphere because that's not really a thing, but the twittering behind the scenes is there are so many men who don't agree with a lot of what's going on, but they're so fearful of losing power that they just keep falling in lockstep with this regime. And so to watch women just and someday we've talked about this. I really would love to do the power code because that really speaks to how women typically use power versus men, and watching somebody like Governor Mills or Senator Murkowski understand that, yeah, her livelihood, the thing she's done her entire life, she's putting on that's amazing.
right. And we don't have a ton of examples here of women speaking out on things we disagree with, but we'd love to hear those too. Because, like if it's truly like a woman speaking out on her own around something that's unpopular where she is, I'd love to analyze that and look at that and
Sure.
be like, sure. We already mentioned Bishop Buddy. I think that's how you say it. My notes aren't, I don't know if they're correct here, but it reminds me that the Pope also did,
Hmm.
challenge what was happening with this, that places of worship should be sacred and not be places where the raids can happen.
Yeah.
Um, but mainly, like, I didn't think it was so radical to say have mercy and be, these are people that, clean the buildings we use and they educate our kids and they pick produce in the fields, and like these are families and let's have some mercy and some kindness, and that was seen as so radical, and it felt so brave for us, but maybe it wasn't brave, maybe it was just her just being like, this was my job, who knows. Yeah.
I mean, it was still brave to do it literally at his face. I mean, it's one
Yes,
thing to do it sort of,
it was shocking.
it was shocking. It was, yeah, it was amazing. It was definitely the highlight of that day. And we've also mentioned Greta Thunberg. I think the thing that's so fascinating about her is she's so young, like Malala. And the women or men and women from the school massacre in Florida, who have created, I'm losing their names now too. Um,
Oh, the kids from like the Parkland.
from
Yeah.
Parkland, yeah. Thank you. It's so young and standing up. I mean, I
Mhm.
think back to, I was 18 probably when I went to my first pro-choice rally. My kids have been doing it since they were born because they just came with me, and it's embedded in them. But for someone like her, or any of those kids, like that takes a lot of courage to be able to keep on keeping on, especially with the Parkland kids who have been told they were crisis
Yeah,
actors and none of this actually happened and blah 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 blah.
that was so strange. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Greta took a lot of heat for being not just a young woman, but for being autistic, right?
Yep.
On the
Hmm.
spectrum. And
Yep.
that's so gross. Like all that she's also, she doesn't seem to give a shit, which is kind of impressive. Um, and the other one we have here is Natalie Maines and the Chicks. They got blacklisted for being one of the first public places that spoke out against the Iraq War. And they really got taken off the radio mainstream. They got rejected from not just country music, but mainstream music, until all of a sudden it became very, very normal for everybody to speak out against it. And they kind of like, they didn't go anywhere, but literally it felt like they disappeared
Yeah.
right after,
Yep.
because people didn't want to, and partly what's different right now is back then that was the 9/11 attacks were so unifying in terms of everybody feeling like, wow, this is so horrible, it's happened on our soil. And so people weren't as comfortable calling out what was clearly, not something that was like cut and dry that was happening. This whole, war in Afghanistan and Iraq war, the search for weapons of mass destruction was that, was kind of the rallying cry. And I think people were a lot less likely to be outspoken about that as they are right now about things, and so that was really bold of them and so surprising that they got in the world of free speech that both sides swear they care about, that they got so silenced.
Yeah. Another person who truly never did recover, Sinead O'Connor, after calling
I
out
know.
the
The
abuse
Pope.
in the Catholic
And
Church and
yeah,
ripping up the picture of the Pope on SNL. She just never really recovered from that. And um, obviously she was challenged with mental illness, and maybe her life would have still gone the way it did, but that really cut her off at the knees.
yeah,
And it was, again, it was before really it came out into the public. And here's the thing, like then it comes out, right? All the abuse in the Catholic Church. Nobody goes back to Sinead and goes,
scary.
sorry.
You're right.
Right? Nobody. She will always and forever. I mean, I watched a lot of behind the scenes, and I know you did too, about the SNL's 50th. Um, and I think they paid her some due there. They
I agree.
definitely, in the
That
music,
was like a small nod, way too late, but yeah.
way too late, on only on Peacock. But still, if you were watching it, it was like, okay,
Or super subtle if you were watching the live thing, which was, them singing her song. But yeah,
right. Yes, that's true. Um, Then we move into Simone Biles, again, speaking out on abuse and how she chose her mental health over the world stage. All, again, a whole nother topic, but all the brouhaha over the 10, maybe, transgender athletes. Why don't we look at the men that are abusing our athletes on the regular, and whether it's physical or mental or whatever. Um, that was really
yeah.
powerful for her to step away and then come back and kick some major fucking
I
ass
mean,
again.
right. Like the two things. Yeah, you're right. And I'm just gonna reiterate it. Like the speaking out about the abuse, but also like really going, I'm done. I'm done. I
Yeah,
don't feel good. And putting up with so much criticism and all the accusations of being, of letting down our country and all that bullshit. And it was like, we hate to watch a woman set a boundary and take care of herself. That's so
right.
strange. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Another one, I'm gonna butcher her name and I don't want to. Leila Pashay, an Iranian activist arrested in March 2025. So it was just recently for speaking out against compulsory veiling, child marriage, and violence against women. I don't know a ton about it, but I've read about it a little bit, and that's really scary to do there right now. And
Mm,
something I've posted a couple times recently is like in the 80s, there were Iranian women in parliament wearing
yep.
suits and dressed modernly. And then look where we are now with them, they're not even able to like speak in public. And so it's a great reminder that things are not guaranteed, and
Yep.
that we can lose things really fast. And so for her to risk probably her neck, ouch, something just fell on my foot,
Oh,
um, for her to risk, her life to just speak out for injustice is powerful. And I wanted to include her, even though I don't know much about her or how to say her name correctly.
well, there's been a lot of women in that neck of the woods really putting themselves out there. Um, and they pay the physical price,
Yeah,
for it, for sure. They get disappeared and so forth and so on. Talk about a name I'm not going to be able to pronounce. Amanda Akenis,
I think so. I think so.
Echanis. She's a Filipino writer and activist, who, again, her imprisonment reminds us there is a high cost of dissent in some parts of this world. And I will be honest, I fear we're headed that direction. I'm not going to
You
lie.
know, I don't know if you ever listened to it. We talked about it and I sent it to my family. I think I sent it to you, but Maria Ressa, who is a Nobel Prize winner she's a Nobel Prize winning journalist from the Philippines. She was
Yes.
recently on a podcast with Jon Stewart.
Yep.
Super funny. And like she got in a ton of trouble just for reporting on the fascist leadership of Duarte. I think that's how you say his name, Duarte.
Yep.
And she is like living to tell about it, but she's still dealing with the cost of that. Like she has to get permission from the government to do anything still. She's still kind of dealing with some of those lawsuits. So it's fascinating.
And then the final one, you want to do this one?
Yeah, this French author, I'd read about this when I was also learning about Giselle.
Mm.
Um, her name's Camille Kushner. She went public with allegations of rape against her stepfather about 4 years ago, I think, sparking a national conversation in France about incest, abuse, and silencing. She wrote a memoir called La Familia Grande, and it became a turning point in the country's reckoning with sexual abuse, which is, I think, why you see so many women protesting in just huge numbers there. They're often topless. They're often like in this, like, they look like this just badass feminist crowd. And I think that was kind of like the beginning, maybe not the beginning, but where the world started to notice this turning tide against, some old misogynistic norms in that country. So yeah.
One that's not on it. I mean, already this is clearly nowhere near a complete list of all the
Right.
people, all
This is
the
just
women
us
that have
picking
done this.
random examples.
Yeah, but you saying that struck me. I remember I went to a book release, like the anniversary book release of Ms. Magazine, 50 years,
Mhm.
a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, something like that. And one of the women that spoke was one of the singers of Pussy Riot. And
Mm.
already just that day, I was like, gosh, she looks so young. And of course, what they went through in Putin's Russia and being jailed and tortured and everything. At such a young age, just trying to stand up for humanity.
Mm.
It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing.
One person I didn't put on here just popped in my mind, and it maybe sounds smaller scale, but I was really impressed with Chappell Roan. Is that how
Yeah,
you say
Chapel
her name?
Roan.
Chappell Roan. I never know if it's Chappell or Chappell. When she won her Grammy, she spoke out against the very industry that's like paying her still,
Yep.
and said, don't take, don't take advantage of young artists. You need to pay them fair wages. You need to offer them benefits. Like, and she had written in her journal and said, I promised myself I'd say this someday. And she like turned the pages and read all the stuff that she had written when COVID happened and they all got dropped and they literally had no pennies to keep writing music. And she really took a stand on that. And I thought, that's so cool. I love when artists do that and speak out for
Yeah.
other artists, because I think people could very conveniently forget when they can download something for free that, like, this is their livelihood and they're contributing to your life and to the culture that you get to enjoy, and they need to be compensated. And people hate to, like, for some reason they don't remember that. So it's really good when people speak out about it.
Yeah, it's whenever anybody speaks out at an awards ceremony, it's always just like the hard eye rolls and shut up and
Hmm.
sing, shut up and dribble. I mean, we've been told to just get back to women's health.
Yes, we
And
have.
you know what?
We never
Nah.
said we were talking about women's health, by
I
the
know.
way.
I was like,
That's
well, first
funny.
off, no, but second off, no. Again, how can we
Look at our, like, we're literally holding a glass of wine in that photo. So I don't know why you thought we were going to talk about women's health. I mean, we do. That's part of it.
drinking red wine is important. That's part of health.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think the French would agree with this.
I agree. But I think it's interesting because this idea that when you speak up, you should shut up and sit down is says who? Like, I think
Yeah.
that speaks more to the person who is telling whoever, just stay in your lane. Just because we have a lane doesn't mean we have to stay in it. Yes, and for us, and I think I said this at the beginning of the season, like our whole focus, you and I, is about helping women step into their power and know that the best is
Hmm.
not behind them and that we got you. What you're going through, we get. If we ignored everything that was going on in this world right now and just hummity hummed along about menopause, like that would be
Yes.
so inauthentic of us. I
Yeah.
get it. Not every influencer feels this is doing the same. To each their own, I suppose. But you and I've had this conversation. We're a little less impressed, and I'm not going to name names, but a little less impressed by the people who are keeping their mouth shut. You know?
Yeah, it's an interesting time right now. I remember my dad used to say and it wasn't my dad, maybe it was my friend's dad. I'm trying to remember. The only thing in the middle of the road is a broken yellow line and dead animals.
That's
Like,
that's
pick a
good.
side.
Yeah.
And not everything has a clear side. I think the point here isn't pick a side. It's like, just pick yourself. Just
Yeah.
what is feeling most true for you. Even if I don't agree with it, I'm going to silence people around us in the moment so you can speak. I am going to make sure everyone hears you. Because I think that's the thing, is there's too much silencing. There's too much prevention or intimidation to stay
Yeah.
quiet and go along. I mean, I think about, like, as we're sitting here, it's like, oh my gosh, like Tia Lovings or
Yeah.
Alyssa, who was just on the pod, and people who are not just going against their families, they're going against what they really thought was the core of their beliefs to call
Yeah.
certain things out. And I think that is that there's such a loss of identity, or a perceived loss of identity, when you do that. If I actually speak truth to this, who am I? What do I believe anymore? um it can often be like what's holding people back. So yeah, it's fearful, it's scary.
Yeah. And even though this is about all the brave women that have stood up, we would be absolutely remiss if we did not have our honorable mention of Mr. Senator Cory Booker. Obviously, not again the focus of this interview, but or this
But it just
podcast,
happened this week that we're
but it
recording
just
it, so.
happened. And to watch, I mean, there was so much gloriousness about it. You and I were traveling back. We were wrapping up the retreat. We were traveling back. So I got to sit down and watch it. I guess I probably watched about the last 8 hours of it. You know, the easiest thing to be proud of is that he surpassed Strom Thurmond's standing up for 24 hours and some change to try to bring down the civil rights movement and voting act. And of course, Senator Booker is an African American man doing quite the
He's Jewish.
opposite.
He's a Black Jewish man too, which is really
Correct.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. But I also, for me, and you and I haven't talked about this, but because we hadn't been watching and I didn't really know how this would go down. There was actual, for me, joy in watching this, because watching each Democratic senator get up and ask a question, which gave him a
Yeah.
moment to breathe, although he would answer all of them, there was levity and there was joy and there was absolute speaking truth to power, picking with each Democratic senator, picking us. He talked to Tammy Duckworth about veterans, and he talked to, I don't know, she's the one that jumps out at me because Tammy Duckworth from Illinois, but um, speaking to every single thing that is trying to be ruined in this country with in 25 hours. He did not sit down. He did not eat. He did not go to the bathroom for over 25 hours. Talk about standing
He
up for
never
what?
went to the bathroom? Like,
No,
he
you
really didn't?
can't. You cannot go to the bathroom. You
Wow. How
cannot
did he
stop talking.
do that?
I mean, I heard that he stopped. So let's see, we flew home on Tuesday. So it started on Monday at 7 o'clock Eastern time, ended at a little after 8. My understanding is, at the very least, he did not eat or drink since Saturday. So he actively did not. And you can't sit down and you can't stop talking. You have to say very specific words to everybody that asks you a question, saying that he is opening it for a question, but he's not, ending his time. But yeah, no bathroom breaks, no sitting down, no eating for over 25 hours.
Crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, crazy wonderful. Like, it
Yeah.
was impressive, and I got very emotional watching it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody's, oh, it's performative. Well, yeah. Speaking up is performative. Going to marches is performative. I mean, when I said, oh, it's just performative, even then I was like, and I meant it at the time. And then I've been reading about like people bitching about him doing this, saying, oh, he's just being
Yeah.
performative. I'm like, that's what it takes. And that's why I changed my mind and
Yeah.
decided to go to this march, because I was like, you're
Right.
right. This is
Well,
performative. And without performance, nobody noticed.
it's funny because I get so many. I understand. I'm not saying I agree with it when I get it, but I'm aware and I acknowledge there's a lot of people who want nothing to do with the unpleasantness of politics. Which, whatever, we'll talk about
Privilege.
that till we. But yeah. And my response to that is like one of the things I reposted. It's like, okay, do you think, when I'm really deeply upset about what's happening to the disability community, do you think that speaking up about these is annoying? Because do you not know how we got them in the first place? Like somebody's like, do you think
Right.
we got these rights for people with disabilities from a disability fairy? It took unpleasantness. It took a lot of loud performative stuff to get the attention to say these are people we love and they need to be included, and things need to be more accessible. It takes getting attention to make things happen. And what's funny is like nobody gave us equal rights. We just never had them. So it's like
Right.
that took some fight.
Right.
So it's just kind of ridiculous. But I want to turn like in the direction of like, it isn't always loud. It isn't always
Mm-mm.
performative. Sometimes some of the most heroic things we are not even mentioning here because we may not even know. It
Right.
might not be public. It can be a really quiet boundary in a relationship or within a family. It can be a refusal. It can be just simply naming something that's been hidden. I always loved RBG because of her quiet tone. She spoke
Yeah.
very softly about things, and with so much power. Obviously, she had to speak out enough to get as far as she did, but I really do love to remind us that there are ways we can be strong in our convictions that aren't, you know, broadcast to everybody.
Yeah. And even I saw this today actually, that something around even silence. Like this sounds like the opposite of what we've just been saying, but in a moment where you're being confronted by someone who's trying to shut you down or spew misinformation that they believe, walking away is also very powerful. Not letting them move into your house, into your head, with a
Yeah,
rent-free apartment, not letting them drain your energy. Those are really powerful ways of dissenting because, especially in these one-on-ones, they can be trying to be combative for the sake of being combative, And so if your choice in any given conversation is to be like, I'm out of here, that is also a very powerful way of standing your ground and living your values. No question.
absolutely. For some people, the bravest thing they'll ever do is confront long-held family dynamics that are,
Mm,
really, really damaging for them. Yeah, I agree. Leaving a toxic job, leaving a toxic relationship, those things are hard.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um, so let's talk about how we support each other. What do you think creates the safety and the invitation for women to speak up? Again, even if we don't agree with them, like what do we want to, how do we want to say we can support that?
I think being in community, I mean, it's our go-to all the time. It's one of the core values of the things we know is women in community. Um, for me, I feel like just it's I've had the experience of not agreeing with somebody. What I am not willing to do is stay silent when you're spewing misinformation, right?
Totally.
If you are spewing things that are not actually factual, I'm not going to just agree to disagree with you.
And I would say there's a difference between speaking up on your truth and,
Yes,
spreading
lies.
propaganda. And
Yeah.
someone could share a story that is very inconvenient to what I think and what I believe, right?
Yep.
And so I challenge myself to do the same thing. Like, okay, if that's your story, I'm going to believe you. Because that's the next thing is like women aren't, they're so quickly not believed. We are so programmed to just, assume the worst. And I've seen it so much in the culture I grew up in. I've heard the women in my life be much harder on women than they are on men, and giving men such a more benefit of the doubt, and not constantly, not across the board, but way more. So the importance of being believed, having witnesses and allies, and not being raked over the coals to prove yourself.
Right.
I think that's the filter we all need to have. This like, okay, we're all women. What is your story? Um, and I really like. I want to come into this believing you no matter what. Unless we start to get the sense that this isn't really your true story. This is like
Right.
some propaganda that
Right. Exactly.
but I really do think it's important for women to believe each other. And I
Yeah.
think that gets challenging when we make assumptions.
Absolutely. One of the four agreements for sure. And just individually, and I have to do this on the regular basis. I mean, this is an active practice for me, which is kind of speaks to what you're saying as well. Be the kind of person who holds the space for someone to find their voice.
Mm,
And what that really means is bear witness. You don't have to be, your voice doesn't have to be heard. If you're talking to somebody who is sharing something, um, their beliefs, again, even if they're not in alignment with yours, instead of attacking, actively listen. Ask
mhm,
a few questions that reflects that you've heard them so that maybe you can get to the nut of what their belief is and um and be able to unpack that together. Maybe there is more common ground. But if we are automatically in this defensive stance all the time, which is hard not to be if you're already a woman who hasn't been believed, who is constantly being pushed back on, right? I guess be the person you want people to be for you.
mm. Yeah, you don't have to prove anything. Just know
Right.
that people that are worth your time believe you
Yeah.
and believe in you.
Yeah.
You said that, and all of a sudden I thought of I'm in a
I
nutshell.
knew you did. I saw the smile on your face and I was like, oh, she was
I almost
thinking,
derailed you. I'm sorry.
you did almost derail me. Couple of great quotes
Okay.
here. You want to do the
Yeah,
first one and I will do the second one?
sure. The first one's by Angela Davis.
Mm,
I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept. I did not know that was her quote. I've seen that a lot recently, and I didn't know it was attributed to her. But
yeah.
whether or
What a
not it is, it's
powerhouse. No, I think it
um,
is. That is hers.
it's
Yeah.
super, super true. Like, why try changing the things what why try accepting the things you can't change? Like, like that is I can let things go that I can't change. I can move away from them. But if there's things I can't accept, then I got to do what I can to change it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I definitely don't have to accept things and I can't change certain things. And yeah, that is true. But if it really bothers me and I don't want to accept it, then I got to use my voice.
Yep. No question. And then the second one is Speak Your Truth, Even If Your Voice Shakes by Maggie Kuhn, I'm going to say.
I was gonna say
Um,
coon. I don't
Kuhn,
know. Yeah.
Kuhn. I mean, that, as someone who cries on the regular, I am often, and when I get angry, especially, that is my go-to emotion is crying. And there has been so many times in the last almost 10 years now where I am responding to something and I am literally shaking my hand, to the point where I almost can't type. Sometimes I stop and I let that go, and sometimes I forge on because of the quote from Angela Davis. Um, your voice shaking is probably a real good sign that you're standing up for something that is a core value. It's
Yeah.
not, you would
Amen.
think standing up for your core values would be easy, but when you're being pushed back on, it can feel, you can gaslight yourself, quite frankly. You
And
know,
when you care that much, it resonates through your whole body. So it
it
makes
really,
sense.
really, really does. Yeah.
Mm. So this whole conversation is way more than headlines. We touched on headlines, but really it's about women and us. Like, honestly, it started with you and I going, why is it always women? Why is it always women who are
Yeah.
like the first to speak up? And that is not, again, dissing any certain men who do it probably often enough. It just feels like recently the first to crack something open keeps being women, and we're really impressed by that.
Yeah. And as you're listening to these stories, the few we've shared, I think the way to be brave is to remember when you have been brave. It's like anything, when you're trying to do something, being able to connect with a time when you've already done it. So again, I'll use myself as an example. It's like I've been going to row marches for as long as I can remember. Being in LA, I got to go to a couple of marches for around the Weinstein trial, and yeah, I've done a lot, and so I had to kind of reconnect with that part. thinking about going this weekend, which again is past by the time you hear this, and going to the hands off, I had to remember who the fuck I was and that I can do this and I will stay safe. And whatever happens, happens. But it doesn't have to mean you have to be fearless. I am fearful of going this weekend. I'm not gonna lie. I have some fear.
Yeah, I mean, me too. And I think that it's if more people, male and female, really showed up in a compassionate way of speaking their truth and people could hear each other, we'd all find out we have a lot more in common
No question.
than and so I kind of hold that hope from it. Like if peaceful demonstrations and protests and open dialogues are possible, I'm here for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, our song is going to do a callback to one of our fearless people that we listed today, which is the Chicks. I think this is a no-brainer. This, although honorable mention to March March, I fucking love that song. I will be playing that as my fire up on Saturday morning. But this song is called "Not Ready to Make Nice," and here are some of the lyrics. I'm through with doubt. There's nothing left for me to figure out. I've paid a price and I'll keep paying. I'm not ready to make nice. I'm not ready to back down. I'm still mad as hell and I don't have time to go round and round and round. It's too late to make it right. I probably wouldn't if I could because I'm mad as hell.
Mm,
Snaps.
love it. Snaps.
Well, if this has been empowering to you to listen to, if it has reconnected you with your brave self, please share this episode with a woman who inspires you or who may need another reminder of her power. And please comment on our Spotify if that's how you are listening.
Yeah. And we'd love to hear from you. If you want to email us, it's pretty simple. It's the things we know podcast 23 because we started in 2023. So things we know podcast 23 at gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Who inspires you to speak out? What story of a woman who's brave enough to speak out sticks with you? We'd love to hear. We're always looking to expand our awareness and what other people are noticing that we have missed out because obviously these are the things we know and feel and believe. So let us know. We love dialogue and hearing from you, and a lot of our topics come from people who reach out to us, so thank you.
And if this is resonating with you and you'd like a little more support around being brave, please feel free to schedule a coaching call with either Kari or I. Both of our calendar links are in the show notes. We would love to help you own your voice and navigate your own courageous turning point. And then we'll be back next week to talk about our next retreat, which is a lovely little companion piece to this week's topic.
Mm, like,
Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next week.
bye bye.